got Johnny Mack here. Yeah, he's going to help us with some TA stuff. And yeah, this is a friend of mine who has helped me out a lot with the TA, and I'm still learning.
We've got
you there,
this
John?
chart up here.
I am, guys. How are you?
Good. So we're going to start with Garibaldi.
Okay, so you want to talk Garibaldi first?
Yeah, let's talk Garibaldi. Sure.
Okay, so full disclosure here, I do own the stock. I've owned the stock for quite a while. So when I look at Garibaldi, I think one of the things people following the story are sort of, close to. They know that we're expecting news in the near term. I think, it's come out recently. I think BMR basically said, expect news or almost guaranteed news by the middle of September. So we know that we should be getting some sort of news-driven event at some point. People that have been holding the stock have been looking for some results. Basically assays and what's the company been doing since June when they first started to drill. So that event, and whenever that news comes out, whether it's this week, whether it's next week, that is going to drive, the next big, push, whether it's going to be down or up. So when I look at the chart, recently it's been under a bit of selling pressure. You can see since basically mid-May, we've been under selling pressure here. It did have a nice rebound. The volume picked up one day. We had a nice lower wick. It rebounded, but again, we're getting that selling pressure. And we're back around the 225 level, and I see that as kind of a support zone. So we rebounded in late March on that level. We sort of rebounded from that level here, even though we did have an intraday move below. So I see the 225 area personally as an area that I'd like to see hold. To get this back looking bullish again, we're going to have to lock in a higher low at some point. So I definitely would like to see a rebound back up off this area, and maybe the maybe the news that's forthcoming will give us that. So one thing for me, I look at GGI as more of a longer term play. So if I kind of switch to a longer term view, to go to let's take a look at the longer term view. So this is a logarithmic chart, and the reason I use logarithmic chart is because the stock has made such a huge move in the last year and a half, and it gives you your percentage moves as equal distance on your chart versus a normal chart where this would sort of lose its perspective. But when you look at it this way and you look at the percentage moves it's making compared to the run it had last summer and fall, we're actually in a fairly, relatively speaking, a fairly narrow trading range. So, you can annotate this a bit and say,
hey John,
here's your.
Would you be able to zoom in just maybe by like 20% on your screen?
I can try.
There you go.
Is that better?
Beautiful. Thanks, Ben.
Yeah, so if you kind of look at this trading range, it's more or less been in. So I like to see this on stock. So when you think about it, this run that we had, I mean, this is a substantial run. And anytime a stock does this, technical analysts look for the Bollinger Bands to offer resistance. What we have here is called walking the bands, where the buying pressure is so significant that you're constantly pushing the boundaries. Push, push, push. You see this volatility expansion. The Bollinger Bands, this orange area on my screen is just getting really wide. And I mean, that's some significant momentum. And with any stock, you can't keep that sort of momentum. At some point, it has to consolidate. And you have to remember that there was people getting in the stock down here, sub 25 cents. Even when the volume started to come in, a lot of money came in, sub 50 cents, even sub $1. Lots of people took positions in the stock. So when this hit the top, I think around 520, people were in significant positions of profit. So it's very natural for the stock to have a consolidation. And this is very natural. So what you're seeing is basically, and we see the volume drop off here, and I'll highlight that on the chart. So if you look at the volume bars in this section versus here, so this is the volume that drove all the gains, and then in this consolidation we've been in for the last, say, 8-9 months, the volume has really dropped off, and the trading range is getting tighter. So we had, you know, a high, we put in a low, sort of a lower high, higher low, and we're in this sort of what almost like coiling behavior. So things are just getting tight, and this is just shares exchanging hands. It's the people that got in early, selling out, and they might be happy with their profit, and the new people that are taking their positions, you know, they might be happy to buy around $2 because they, you know, they're looking at this as a long-term play with potential to be, you know, $10, $20, $30 stock potentially if, you know, if the company delivers some of the results that people think they could. So they're happy to be entering here and buying from the people that bought way down here. So that process of shares trading hands, as you know, as the stock consolidates, is very healthy. And the reason I like it is what it does is it sets the stock up for a nice move. If they were to post some good results now, a lot of these shares have left weak hands or into stronger hands, and if we were to make a move up and break out of this range, that would be very bullish, and it would set it up for a very big run. So I would expect it to beat, you know, potentially the previous high and push even higher, and that's because we've had this nice long consolidation period. So a couple things of note when I look at the Garibaldi chart. You can actually draw a nice little angular resistance line on CUMSA.
This is pretty cool.
So there's been basically seven touches on this trend line. So anytime you get a trend line where you've got lots of touches, the more times it touches and rejects. So reject, 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 reject. So there's 7 touches. So we can be pretty confident that's a, you know, a fairly robust angular resistance. So one thing I would be watching is if we get good news, can we break out of this downtrending angular resistance line? So that would be one thing that would be good. So that's one thing to watch. The other thing that I'm watching is, you know, just even breaking this recent high. So if we were to break the recent high at $3, so I have my eye on $3 as resistance, and then the peak previous over at about $3.30, which is $3.30 for whatever reason in the past has been a key sort of support and resistance zone. We're trading below it, so we would expect it to offer us resistance on the way up. So those are sort of the resistance levels I have my eye on. One reason I'm sort of bullish on it lately, even though it hasn't looked the best, is I'm starting to see a little bit of momentum divergence from a bullish standpoint. So what I mean by that is you look at your stochastic oscillator at the top, which is a measure of momentum. See that even though on this recent run we put in a lower high from before, we're actually putting in a higher high here. So even though the price action is unable to push the same high as before, we are getting increasing momentum. So what that can tell us is the next low that we form can give us possibly a bull setup. So we would look for a potentially tradable bottom in here, right where we are now. So if we were to get a nice move off this bottom, especially with volume, that would be what I would want to see. And I think we will get the volume from the news. The question is, which way is it going to go? Or is the market going to like the news? Or is the market going to be disappointed? And we don't really know what market expectations are until the news comes out, and how the stock reacts is going to give us information about, has this news exceeded the market expectations? Did it more or less meet market expectations, or has it failed to meet market expectations?
But it's prime and ready to pop in one direction.
Yeah, I see this as a potential positive. That let's see if we get a possible tradable bottom here, and for me to confirm that, I'd want to see this indicator come back up, move back above 50, get back into positive momentum territory. Another
right.
thing that kind of popped out at me as well, gents, from the weekly standpoint, is we're starting to see a little bit of divergence from an accumulation standpoint. So if I throw this on the chart, so the first time this accumulation distribution is sort of a measure of your buying pressure, and you can see the black line, I've superimposed it on the screen. You can see it kind of follows the trend fairly closely. Then all of a sudden we get to the most recent time frame and we're getting this split. You see the price is sort of moving downwards, but this accumulation isn't really confirming that downtrend. So that's an interesting thing I noted as well. So that's sort of a positive. That could imply a bit of what we would call ghost buying pressure here. So some underlying buying pressure on the stock. And so that's sort of, I view that as a positive as well. So that's something I'm keeping my eye on to make to see if that continues.
So who's selling this thing, Mr. Mack?
Well, that's a good question, Carl. I think so. One way to combine technical analysis and chart analysis is to say, okay, what's causing the downtrend? So I brought up the house positions on the stock here. Can you guys see that okay?
You know what? I think you can zoom out a little bit now. They've got you on all 4 screens. There you go. Yep.
Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah. So let's look back over, say, the last month, just say since August 1st. So where is your selling coming from? A lot of it is coming from an anonymous seller, and a lot of people see this in trading. Anonymous can be anybody. A lot of people can trade under anonymous. They're simply hiding their brokerage. They don't want people to know who they are. But as a percentage of the sell volume, just arbitrarily since the beginning of August, we can see anonymous is, all basically a third of the selling. And from net house positions, no one really is close to them. So they do buy and they do sell, and a lot of market making activity occurs under anonymous. So you're going to have anonymous buying and as well as anonymous selling, and that's simply actors in the market performing market making, trying to make a market, facilitate trades. But when you look at it from a net standpoint, no one else is really close. So this is where your selling has come from. And interestingly, this is a stock I sort of watch quite frequently. And I've noticed a lot lately that selling is coming from, it looks to me like an institutional seller is trimming their position. So you see a lot of trades going through on the dark pool, the Triac Match Now dark pool. Right now you're not seeing it. You're seeing a lot of ITG Corp. That's another
institution
brokerage house that I sort of use as an indicator of institutional activity, because I don't believe they have a big retail trading presence at all. So ITG, when I see them selling, and I think they were the second largest net seller. So these two guys right here would be where some of your selling pressure is coming from. And this to me looks like a fund that's sort of trimming its position. It could be more than one fund, or it could be, a single fund that has exposure to the stock, and they're either looking to get out of their position or trim their exposure. And you might ask, well, why would they want to do that? And there could be multiple reasons. One of the reasons could be, sort of macroeconomic driven. If you think about taking a look at sort of our nickel spot prices and where they have gone. So since early June, see nickel hit a peak above $7, and it's been trending down since. So that's your 6-month view. So when you compare that to the GGI chart, if we go back to the weekly view, the daily view. So this is our last 6 months as well. Those peaks are actually fairly close together. The selling on GGI started a little bit earlier, but you can see that GGI has been trending down, and at the same time we had this fall in the nickel spot price.
Interesting.
So this could be giving us some, this could be giving us, a reason for some of the selling pressure we're seeing. And it simply could be, as the price of the commodity falls, the fund manager decides, okay, we need to trim our exposure
Yeah.
Stay within our risk reward tolerances. However, their fund happens to work.
Yeah, and
I mean,
some delays of news, maybe a little bit of combo there.
yeah, I mean the news has been delayed, and I think it's caused a lot of nervousness, maybe some consternation in the market. It's just, certainly among the retail segment, but I think if you're you're a fund manager, you think, well, okay, the stock hasn't had news in a while. Maybe things aren't going as well, if that's what you believe, the reason for news being delayed. If you call it a delay, some people would argue that, this is a big drill program. It takes a while to get assays. Is there really that much of a delay? No. I mean, some people are of that opinion. Other people think, maybe results aren't going to be as good as we thought because it's pushed back. So if you're of that opinion and you own a fund, you might be trimming your exposure a bit because, you want to reduce your risk ahead of results. So those are both possibilities, I think, as to, to explain the selling pressure. Interestingly enough, I would say in the last 2 days, so this whole period here, when I was watching the trading on the stock, I saw lots of that dark pool trading going on. And the last 2 days, I have not seen that. So that rebound we got yesterday, we had a nice lower wick. So the stock rebounded nicely, and today I haven't seen it much as well. But we do have that sort of resurgence of ITG coming in. So I see this as institutional selling pressure as well. One encouraging thing on the chart is, the day that it did, these 2 days where it sort of pushed up, it didn't take much to push the stock up.
No.
550,000 shares pushed the stock up considerably. I think
20%.
Yeah, something like that. So the bottom, we were up, 17% in 1 day on only 550,000 shares. So when there wasn't a lot of sellers, when you didn't have that institutional seller, or I guess I should word that differently, when you had some interested buyers, it didn't take much to push the stock up. And I think that speaks to, what I was talking about earlier, that the float of the company has tightened up considerably. We've had that nice consolidation for about 9 months now, and shares have moved into stronger hands. And that's that's positive for the company. That means if we see some good news, people trying to accumulate new positions, if they've been sort of on the sidelines, maybe they sold out of their stock and they're looking to go back in. When they go to take their positions again, it's not going to take much to push it up because that supply of shares has been dried up.
Yeah, and that fund, if we get some good news, that fund might say, I'm not selling, and then that cuts off the supply even more. This thing is just primed to rip. We get some good news, we are looking nice. That 1 year chart looks really good.
Yeah, I agree. I like the weekly chart. Gives you sort of the bigger picture. I don't see a lot of the the dark pool selling. So usually, if you're looking for dark pool selling, most people are going to see this bid and offer here. And the dark pool is simply, it's hidden liquidity. Brokers can't even see it. It's somebody that's basically sitting. They'll sit between the bid and the offer, and anytime someone wants to buy shares, it'll actually get filled on the it'll route through the dark pool, and they'll split the bid and offer price. So, for example, if I was to buy, say, 5,000 shares, and there was there might be an institutional seller looking to unwind his position, and he wants to do it with as little market impact as possible, he'll actually be sitting here hidden, and someone will execute an order and they would get a fill at, say, 233, and all these shares here sitting on the offer wouldn't get hit.
Right.
And you sit perched between the bid and the offer, and in that way you're going to just soak up the buying as the buyers come. Keep in mind, these institutional sellers, if you're a fund, you want to sell and get the best bang for your buck. You're not looking to manipulate the price. This is not a short attack. You're not trying to scare people out of the stock. You're simply trying to either unwind or trim your position and maintain, the best average cost that you can. And, minimizing market impact is a big part of that. So you could also sort of, taking that into mind, look at the chart and say, okay, if we want this area to hold, then if I'm the guy trying to unwind a position, I don't want to see the support level break. So, maybe that makes sense to let the stock breathe a bit. yesterday they kind of laid off and let the stock recover a bit. You know, maybe they let it come up a bit before they start selling again.
Mm-hmm.
Or, you know, the news blows everybody out of the water and they say, why were we trimming in the first place?
Yeah.
And
you cut off the supply.
You know, everybody does well. So.
Can you go back to the level 2? And
Sure.
can you put it on market by broker? And if we look at let's go to 305. Scroll down to the 305 on the ask. Want to see some? Who is that? Is that TD? Yeah.
TD, yeah.
That's one order.
One order, yeah.
Wow. And is that that's not a resistance level, is it? Because $3 would be
$3 is it's. I mean, it's close to resistance. You know, think of resistances as areas rather than specific levels. I tend to think of resistance levels as areas rather than a specific price. But yeah, basically $3 territory. You know, those even dollar levels always provide what some people call psychological resistance. You know, $2.50, $3, $3.50, etc., $2. So on the downside, I would be looking for $2 to be a support zone. Even though we don't see shares here, but I think you'd see buyers move in.
Yeah.
If we did, if the price were to fall to that level, I think you'd see buyers move in. And one of the important things, if you're a junior investor, if you're new to sort of level 2, this does not give you a complete picture of where where the buying and selling is going to be. You have to keep in mind that the players in the markets don't always want to show their cards. If they have a bunch of orders stacked where they want to buy, that's no different than playing poker and showing the other players at the table your hand. So if you're trying to keep your hand hidden and your intentions hidden, you're not going to step in necessarily and make yourself visible until you're ready to buy. And you always want the cheapest price possible if you're looking to buy. So you're going to keep your, as the saying goes, play your cards close to your chest so that nobody can see them. And
we are noticeably sitting well underneath the last raise, which was a flow through. Was that 330?
320.
I think.
320?
Yeah, 320, 330, somewhere around there. Yeah.
Yeah, some big players got in on that. Do you mind talking a little bit about the fundamentals? Like, what are we looking for? I hold this. Brandon, do you have any?
Yeah, I have for a long time.
And Johnny Mac does. What are we looking for here? What do you guys want to see? Some step out holes?
Yeah, personally for me, I'm not a geologist, but I think what the market is looking for here is really tonnage. Last year when they drilled, they hit some outstanding grades. I think Peter Lightfoot remarked, correct me if I'm wrong on the number, but I think the hole they hit was among the top 3 percentile in the world for holes. That hole 14, I think it was close to 20 meters at over 8%, and you throw in all the other elements in there, the copper and your platinum group elements, and your nickel equivalent is well into the teens, I believe. Wow. I want to say 14% comes to mind, maybe. Yep. Nickel equivalent. I might be getting that number wrong.
Yeah, don't quote back.
But anyway, so we know there's grades there. So one of the big hits, the criticisms is, people think this might be, say, an alpine deposit, so it would be really small pods with very little continuity between, or, everyone said the holes were kind of drilled tightly together. So I think to sort of put those critics to rest, you want to see some nice step-out holes drilled where they're hitting some, continue to hit these high grades, and, be able to prove a bit, some continuity of mineralization between the holes. And that you're hitting some other deposits of mineralization that are still this high grade, and it's showing continuity around, so that when you're mining it, you're not mining some very isolated and discrete pods, that there's sort of a continuity here. The disseminated mineralization, that could be sort of an X factor. Everyone seems to focus on the high grade stuff, but the disseminated stuff is what's really going to help build your tonnage. So, hitting some nice long intercepts of disseminated mineralization would be really positive. So I'd like to see something like that. And with the high tenor here, hopefully the grades of that disseminated continue to, to be positive. And Yeah, so those are sort of the things what I'm looking for. I don't know how many holes they will be reporting, but I think the market is looking for, step out holes that show continuity, that show good grades, some other areas of the high mineralization as well as some good disseminated, and I think if they can provide that in the news release and maybe speak to how the rest of the drilling is going, I think that would be positive.
Yeah.
And hopefully there'll be some drill plan maps and cross sections and stuff, so everyone can properly sort of dissect where the drill holes have been done and build their own models and give form their own opinions on how continuous this mineralization is.
Well, there's still lots of drilling to go on. So I mean, if they can come up with some step outs, we know the grades are good, but we see those grades. And the float is pretty tightly held. I mean, I don't see a lot of people selling. This is my speculation. Who knows what's going to happen? But that's the first news release on the drills, and there should be a lot more news coming.
Yeah.
Can we go back to
arguably probably one of the most anticipated sets of drill results this year on the venture. So many people have made their sort of compared their company to Garibaldi. It's got some respect. Last year a lot of people questioned it, and this year there's been made a lot of references made to Garibaldi and the Garibaldi discovery. So I mean, they have some expectations to meet, but very highly anticipated. There'll be lots of eyes, I'm sure, on the news, and it'll be interesting to see how the market reacts and to see where everyone's expectations are versus what Mother Nature has provided here.
Yeah, and the market's definitely factoring in a big discovery here. So obviously, if they don't have a good news release here, that spring is going to go in the wrong direction. Can you pull up the what do you call it? The house positions. I want to have a look at GMP. GMP, number 74 in your hearts. And
not much, not active in the last month. How far back do you want me to go?
A year. I want to see what percentage it is.
Just go to Sprott, see. You'll see 30%.
Where is it?
So 1.1% of the volume over the last year.
TD's got 20%.
But you know very well that was these are all shares that are locked down, and you have to keep in mind Eric Sprott took a lot of the the off-market shares right through the private placements.
Yeah.
And he was initially buying through Mackey Research as well. So when he first made the big buys, where it sort of became known to the market, I think it was around $1. He sort of switched later to GMP, but Mackey I remember, if I remember right, when he was filing his buys, the Mackey purchases on the market sort of corresponded to his buying activity.
So who's net negative right now? We got PI,
Anonymous.
Anon.
Yeah, and this can be multiple people. It will, I mean, guaranteed it will be multiple people, and it's so tough to figure out who this seller is. A lot of funds like to use Anonymous just to kind of disguise their activity. And
okay.
So
Brandon, any questions on Garibaldi?
No, I love the way you went through this, because so many of us just look at today's share price, yesterday's share price. You get other people start looking at the L2s, the graphs. You have gone well beyond that, showing the graphs from recently, over the last weeks, over the last year, going through the dark pool, seeing how people or in different institutions are most likely the buyers or sellers, and you're putting all these pieces together where all of a sudden you've got a way better picture of what's actually going on. You can never actually guess it. There's always fundamentals, like the results about to come out, that are going to change things. But it really does paint a picture that people are just waiting. The share price, yeah, it's coming down, but it's not a massive sell-off. That's important to know the difference.
Yep.
Yeah, the volumes, you have to, volume is so important. So, volume precedes price movement. So again, if we sort of, take it back to the weekly view to get sort of the longer term picture, you look at the volume that moved this stock way back then, and look where it is now. I mean, this is nothing. This is just all, and this is, you know, this is consolidation. This is normal, healthy. When you consolidate a stock, you know, you expect the volume to be low. And, you know, this is exactly what you expect. So this is not, you know, this is not unusual. This is not something to be worried about. This is shares moving from weak hands to strong hands. You know, the people averaging up maybe that like the stock. You know, myself personally, lucky enough to get shares down here, was buying all the way up here. I did average up a bit, so I have been part of the buying in here, and you know, I brought my average up, but you know, I'm confident in the play. And, you know, it's not a guarantee. If you can assign risk to the junior resource sector, you know, I think it's arguably the most risky sector out there in terms of junior investing, because you can get some, you know, one day you can be trading really well, and the next day, you know, the company posts results that the market doesn't like. You can lose 70-80% of your market cap in a day, and you know the people, even the guys relying on you know, stop losses and stuff, that's not going to protect you here on some of these junior mining companies, because you know the results come out after market or pre-market. There's no, you know, there's no opportunity to jump out on the momentum. It's, you know, it's almost like a step change. So
yeah,
you know, well, very important with these companies to manage your risk. And you know, this is not investment advice, but I mean, with anything, and especially these juniors, make sure you're managing your risk and you know, you're keeping your exposure to the company reasonable. You know, everyone says, you know, there's people that say Eric Spratt's a speculator. You know, he can afford to speculate, other people can't. That's not true. Everyone can afford to speculate. It's the dollar amount that they can afford to speculate on that changes. So,
keep
you know, make sure that the dollar amount that you're, check your emotion, and you know, make sure that you're speculating within a, you know, an appropriate amount of money that's not going to cripple you if you know, you bet the wrong way, sort of thing.
I remember calling Johnny Mac.
Yeah.
and the stock was around 60 cents. I'm like, John, I'm getting a little emotional here. He's like, well, that's not good. And I bought more. But wow.
Well, I appreciate it so much, John. We're running out of time. We need more of these. These are great. I love it.
Pressure.
I love hearing it.
He's amazing.
No, I just mean in general, we need to go through technical analysis more often on these shows in different ways. You and I jump on. I love it. I love knowing more about this.
I can't do that stuff.
Well, you're not Rain Man?
No, but I mean, he just helped a lot of people. Anyone who's been following Garibaldi, I mean, we got to definitely cut this segment up and put it on our channel, because a lot of people need to see this stuff.
Absolutely. Well, I do appreciate, my man. I hope you enjoy the rest of your afternoon as well, and we'd love having you on.
All right, Johnny.
Sounds good, guys. Thanks for having me.
All right, take it.